Has begun.
Excellent. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to my webinar. We're going to talk today about what is a needs analysis and why do you care. I have a Twitter hashtag that I'd like you to feel free to use. I was going to really shorten all of those words, but it turns out you have to be very careful with those words and how you shorten them. So it's a fairly long hashtag simply because. So, all right, in case you don't know who I am, and I see some names that I'm recognizing, so that's exciting. My name's Sharon Burton. I'm a content consultant, which means if you are having problems figuring out what to do with your content, I'm the kind of person that you will call. I'm an STC Associate Fellow, which is something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of that because I really believe that TechCom is a very important thing to do, and I want all of us to be excellent at it. I think that we provide instructions to the world so that they can do the amazing things that they're going to do, and I think that's a very important thing for us to do. And I spend a great deal of time teaching. You can see all of the teaching things I do, and I'm really passionate about our field and what we do. And so I got my STC Associate Fellowship. That was recognition that I spent a lot of time doing that. So pretty darn exciting. I'm very proud of that. It's funny how you get proud of certain things, and so there I am. So there's a picture of me. My son took that. He takes great pictures of me. Before we get started with the actual webinar, I'd like to say thank you to DCL. They are just simply the bomb. They are really committed to doing these webinars to make sure that you have access to information to help keep you up to date on what's going on in our field, what the best practices are, just generally that kind of thing. And as far as I can tell, they're always free. So I think it's just a terrific resource that they're providing to our community to make sure that we all just are able to stay up to date on what's going on. So DCL's got 30 years of experience. Converting documentation, setting you up for various things. You can see they've just got a ton of stuff there. They can help you. One of the big things when you decide to go with new tools or whatever is typically you have just buckets and buckets of legacy content. And in my experience, one of the most time-consuming parts about moving to the new tools to get better workflow, et cetera, is getting that legacy content converted. And DCL is just fantastic at that. That this is one of the things they specialize in. They're good at it. They know what they're doing. And it just takes all of the headache out of it. It's like having elves come in the dark of night and convert your content for you. So this is the kind of stuff they do: audio, video, transcriptions, ebook production. I think all of us are either looking at ebook production now with our content or looking to move to it. Or we've moved to it. DCL can help with that. They just kind of do all of it. And, you know, it's fantastic. So let's keep those guys in mind. They've got lots of clients. They didn't just show up yesterday. They've got 30 years of experience in this, so they know what they're doing. This is all good stuff. And they're just super nice people. Every time I work with DCL, we always wind up laughing. And they're good at what they do. So sense of humor and competent. It's really everything you could hope for. So, yeah, they do stuff, and keep them in mind when you decide you need to have some help. Keep them in mind because they're neat and they're helpful and cost-effective and all kinds of stuff like that. All right, so let's cover some webinar mechanics before we get actually into the meat of this. You are muted. So if you have been shouting into your phone or your computer, hoping that I can hear you, we can't. You're muted. But that does not mean you cannot interact with us. You can certainly, and we urge you to, type questions in the questions area on your GoToWebinar panel. We will be monitoring that in real time, and then at the end, we'll be doing questions and answers. So you certainly should type a question if you've got one. We are, in fact, recording this webinar. None of your personal information will appear, and you will get a recording link to the recording about this time tomorrow. But please don't panic if it is close of business tomorrow. Sometimes this all can just take a little bit of time. But as soon as it's ready, you'll get a link. You will also be getting a link to a document that I'll be showing you today, so you can download that and use it for your own thing. Feel free to do that. We should be done at the top of the hour. I know you've got a really busy day, and I really appreciate the time that you're giving me, because if your day is like my day, giving up an hour of your day is a significant thing. So we will be done at the top of the hour. That said, if there is interest and there are a lot of questions, etc., I can certainly stay for a little bit after the top of the hour, but we'll have wrapped up the formal stuff and hopefully answered the big meaty questions by then. So if you need to take off, you can. So there we are. So supporting us today is, as you've noticed, DCL. We have a DCL person who is helping us, and she will be answering things in real time, kind of behind us. So if you've got issues, perhaps your screen isn't refreshing, perhaps you're joined late, but whatever it is, she'll be helping you in the background because Jen rocks. And let's do a virtual round of applause for DCL for hosting this webinar and the others they do, providing real value for us. Yay, yay, virtual round of applause, yay. They rock. My personal go-to webinar only hosts up to 100 people, and DCL has stepped in and helped me out when I've had a topic that I thought only a few people would be interested in. It turned out like several hundred people. We did one where we had something like 350 people signed up in the first 24 hours. And I had to step in and ask DCL to help, and they did without even a second thought. That's just the kind of people they are. So yay, hooray, rock on. Okay, so here we go. Meat of the presentation. So let's look at what is a needs analysis, because before we can talk about what it's going to get you, what it involves, all of that, we need to come up with some kind of quick definitions. So when I talk about a needs analysis, I talk about, let's look at what the situation that you have is right now, in all of its glory and ugliness. A realistic, honest assessment of where you are right now. And let's look at what the business problems are that come out of where you are right now. Let's look at where you want to go. And then how does going there solve those business problems? So it's fun. So typically, not always, but typically a needs analysis gets kicked off because people decide that they need to start thinking about new tools. They maybe realize that the way they're doing things isn't going to work super well for them. And I'm going to talk about some of the ways that you might know that. Often what happens is people decide they need new tools, so they'll post to a user group, what's the best tool, which is silly. So the better way to go about this is to look at exactly what your situation is right now, where it should wind up specifically, what the business drivers are specifically, and there are always business drivers here, and then what best practices might be needed. So whether you're going for new tools or new processes or really new anything, you should do an evaluation to find out these kinds of things, to get a full picture of what's going on right now so that you can better understand what it is you're doing and then where you want to go. And not very often, I will have clients come to me and they will tell me how they wish this all worked. And they'll present how they wish this worked as how it works. That's not what we're after. This is an honest assessment of where we are. So how do we do this? I know I keep saying this honest examination of where we are, but really, you would be surprised. As my grandmother used to say, if wishes were horses, then beggars would ride, which I was probably 12 before I understood what she meant. But nonetheless, my grandmother used to say that. So we need to do an inventory. We need to start with an inventory of content, of tools, of process, of needs, and of goals. So let's start with an inventory process, or inventorying our process. This is often the most difficult one. So we need to look at, in no order of importance, the review process. And for most of us in the industry, the review process is probably the most difficult part of our process. I'm working with a client right now who functionally had no review process. They would send things out for review, nothing would happen, and then they would send out an email saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and release this content, and at that point, everybody would set their hair on fire and run around the room screaming, and then they would go into this incredibly difficult, incredibly painful review process where, by and large, every single piece of content that they had sent out for review was completely rewritten, and it was a nightmare. And I know that this is a problem for all of us because I've been to this rodeo a few times, and I know this is one of the most difficult things. I've been docs manager a few times. This is hard. The review process is hard. An equally often difficult process is the build process. Now, you may just be creating PDFs, but at some point those PDFs have to be somehow made available. More typically, you're creating online help, which somehow needs to integrate into the product itself. And very typically, you're creating at least PDFs and online help, and these need to be integrated into the product in some manner. And the difficulty of this ranges from the developers don't understand why all of your stuff isn't in the build folder, so when the build kicks off, that just automatically gets included, all the way to if you say the word build to the developers, they all set their hair on fire and burst into tears. But realistically, our stuff needs to be in the build process so that it gets picked up and it gets included into the build. And one of the reasons this can be difficult is you could be in an environment where nobody understands that the product documentation is part of product. So they don't understand why the docs need to be in the build. And I have seen processes for the build where the TechCom people, every time a build is kicked off, the TechCom people have to manually move all their deliverables into the final location, which doesn't sound, tremendously difficult. It's not. It's just enormously time-consuming. So that can be really difficult. Then there's the delivery process, which is kind of related to the build process, but not always. The delivery process is how do we make our content available to our customers? Do we, for example, hide it behind a firewall so that our customers have to have an account, et cetera, before they can get to any kind of user assistance? This can make it really difficult. What happens typically is nobody, well, not nobody, but very few people will take the time to go to the effort of getting behind the firewall to get to the user assistance. What they do instead is they call customer support or they chat with customer support. And so the customer support costs are off the charts. And this doesn't make sense because, in fact, most people want to use the user documentation. And I know this because I just released the results of a consumer opinion poll for the second year. People want to get into the user documentation. They want to help themselves. So, and another issue with the delivery process is it can take a long time to get things moved out into where they are available to customers. I have a client right now where we put things up on a staging server, and then we have to send an email to the development guys who then push it all out. And then we need to analyze how do our customers get to our information, which is an entirely other webinar. So then we look at things like how old are our tools? Are we using the same tools that we've been using for 3, 5, 8 years? This is a really important part of a needs analysis because if we are using tools that don't support what it is that we want to do, that the business drivers tell us we need to move to, we're probably going to have to change tools. It could be you're not sure. It could be that you're using tools that perhaps could let you get there, but you don't know because you're not using them to their full advantage. And in no way am I saying that there's something wrong with you. I'm just saying that you're not doing that. So it certainly is something that you need to look at, whether you know how to make the tools get you to where you need to go or not. Doesn't matter. Is it possible? It's possible that you'll just need more training. That's possible. But you should be definitely looking at your tools to get a sense of what is it that your tools do, and can they get you where it is that you need to go. Related to your tools is how old is your content development methodology. If you are still writing in a chapter-based or document-based methodology, because that's what your tools support, you are probably going to need to move to new tools. You may be using more modern tools that don't lock you into those methodologies, but you're not using the tool in the smartest possible way. And I've seen both, certainly. Are you localizing? It could be that the way you're developing content right now really well, except that you're about to start localizing, and now it's not necessarily going to start working for you super well. A big thing that I see when I'm doing needs analysis with companies is they just bought another company. And now they've discovered that this other company is using a whole different set of tools with a whole different content development methodology, and somehow this all has to get integrated. And trying to figure out, everybody falls in love with the way they do things, right? So everybody's in love with the way they do things, so it becomes like this religious war. No, we shall do it the way we're doing it. No, we bought you. You should do it the way we do it. And that can get difficult. And being in love with the way you're doing things is not necessarily the best way to go about doing things, or the best way to make decisions about how you're going to keep doing things. And then there are other common challenges. For example, one of your business drivers may be that your entire audience has decided they wish to receive your documentation on their mobile devices. And for specifically as ebooks, I had a student about a year ago who made, and this is crazy, I would never have thought of this, they make giant digger machines, bulldozers and things, things like that. And you would think that they would not be on the bleeding edge of technology, those customers, because they drive big, giant, heavy-duty equipment. In fact, the customer base had really started making a big deal that they wanted all product documentation for all the heavy industrial machines available on iPads. They wanted them as ebooks, and they wanted available on iPads. And so this company was literally jumping from delivering as hard copy directly to delivering as ebooks. There was no intermediate steps. And so this was something they needed to start thinking about and looking at. Do the tools that they need really support that? And if they don't, how do they get there? So if you've been using the same processes for more than about 3 years, and I'm putting in there if you even have processes, and if you don't panic, you're not alone. An awful lot of companies kind of don't. They kind of do, but they kind of don't. If you've been using the same processes for more than 3 years, you might want to examine what you're doing in that honest sort of way regardless, just to see if what you're doing still is the right way to go, and if there are changes that you need to make, etc., to make sure that you're meeting those business driver needs. It could be when you start looking at your processes that you discover that they just don't support what it is you want to do or what it is you want to do moving forward. And it could be that the most you've got is you've just got this vague sense that you could be doing things better, but you don't know how. If you've got that vague sense, it's probably time to sit down and start doing this analysis to figure out what it is you're doing really and where you want to go with that. So then there's the business needs. And the business needs are often, for us TechCom people, some of the toughest things for us to look at. But we really are functioning in a business environment, and it's important that we pay attention to that audience as well. We spend a lot of time focused on what our users need, but we really also need to spend a lot of time focused on what is it our business needs. So what is it our company needs? What are the company needs? What are the business problems that we in TechCom need to be supporting or solving for our company? So things like, as I just said about the industrial equipment people, their customers liked the industrial equipment they were making, but they really wanted the documentation to be available in these new ways. And that's a business problem because the company is going to hear about it from the customers. And the company wants to make it easy for people to use their heavy equipment. Therefore, TechCom solves that problem. What is it your users need? And this is something that we in TechCom like to think about a lot. What is it our users need? You know, okay, so we know that they want some e-books. That would be good. But do they want videos? Do they want e-books? I mean, I know e-books are hot and it's fun and sexy to talk about that, but is that really a problem that our customers have? I would not have thought of that in heavy equipment, but apparently it was. But you might be delivering software, and e-books might not be the right solution for you. So, because it may not be what your customers want. They may not want information that way. It may be that they want information localized. You guys aren't doing that. I've certainly seen that the customers are saying, no, we really, really want this information in Spanish. We really, really do. We're not kidding. And everybody says, well, that would be hard, and so nothing happens. And then what does your group need? Does your group need maybe more training or better training? Maybe you've had the basic training in whatever it is you're doing, but you need more training to better use your tools. Maybe you need to create a new position. Maybe you guys need an information architect or a social media expert or whatever. Maybe you can't get the money to hire a new position, but maybe you can promote somebody. Maybe you need a better content development process. And all of this stuff comes out of looking at what the business needs are for what it is that you're doing. And then out of those business needs comes the goals. What business problems are we solving? And I'm giving you some, and I've got more coming. Maybe your company has decided it's taking too long to localize. Maybe, and this is one I see a lot, maybe it costs too much money to localize. Maybe you guys are spending just a ton of money on localizing. Maybe you're spending too much time/money rewriting the same content over and over again. Maybe, and this is one I see in TechCom all the time, maybe you don't have enough information in your deliverables and customers are complaining. Maybe support is insanely busy, and this could be solved by just providing more information in your deliverables. And I'm not saying that you're doing a bad job now. I'm saying you probably, because of bad processes or just simply aren't providing as much information as you know you should be providing, but there's a whole bunch of reasons why you can't. Those are business problems that need to be solved. And then there's the new deliverables, e-books, video, all of these things that are, most of the TechCom people I talk to know that they probably should be delivering, but they can't right now because of other business problems. Like you've got to send all of your content out to localization 2 months before you ship the product. And that's a huge problem. That means that 2 months before the deadline for the product shipping, you're done with your content development. And that 2 months would be so critical if you could somehow get that back. And by the way, I wanted to really quickly cover some, because TechCom people, we don't tend to be really good at business. But when you're looking at business problems and business reasons, business drivers, anything that is looking essentially up from your position, always think in terms of the following. Cost reduction. It costs us X to do Y thing. And X is usually a lot of money. And Y is a business thing that we need to do. So it costs us X to do Y thing. It costs us a lot of money because our most senior person is unavailable for a week while she checks all of the deliverables into the massively complicated build system. So that whatever it is we pay her for a week, she is doing, it costs us that much to get the deliverables checked into the build system. If we change doing that, if we come up with an automated way to get all of our deliverables checked into the build system, we will save her salary for that week every time we do it because it's automated. You see how this is a business thing, and it's not that difficult to figure this stuff out. So there's the cost reduction. There's the cost avoidance. If we spend a certain amount of dollars now, we don't have to hire more writers or more contractors to meet deadlines, or we don't have to get more computers, or we don't have to do these other expensive things. Just because I love DCL because they're cool, small plug for DCL, if you hire a company like DCL, whether it's DCL or not, to convert your content, that content is available for you to start using in production faster than if you do it yourself. And that can be months faster. So you essentially don't have to pull the TechCom group offline for 2 or 3 months while you're busily converting content. If you can just give it to DCL, let them do it, then very quickly you're back into production. So you're avoiding the cost of everybody being offline converting content. Another one, and people don't think of this when it comes to TechCom, another way businesses care about is increasing revenue. So if we can spend X dollars now, we can penetrate new markets, deliver more information products, etc. So if we spend X now localizing our content into Spanish, we can more easily break into the Spanish market. So we're still spending money, but we are increasing where our products can be sold, or increasing the availability of the information products, which should be increasing the places that our products can be sold. And businesses like this. They like increased revenue. They really like increasing revenue. And we all like increasing revenue because when our company meets their sales goals, that makes everybody happy. I think all things considered, we all can agree, the more money our company makes, the happier everybody is. So increasing revenue. These are the only reasons your company is going to want to spend money. Those 3 reasons. So whatever it is that you want to talk about with your boss, the goals that you have out of your needs analysis, or the problems you're trying to solve, the business problems you're trying to solve by doing a needs analysis, has to be talked about with your boss and your management in these 3 ways. We need to take Becky offline so she can do a needs analysis, because we are pretty sure that if we improve our processes, we are going to be reducing costs by doing better processes than we are now. So those kinds of things, you have to talk about it this way. You can't just go to your boss and go, I think we need new tools. And your boss will say immediately, why? And you'll say, well, I've been watching this other tool, and I really think we should get that cool tool. Your boss is going to go, ha, 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 that's funny, get back to work. Because you provided no business reason to do that. And by the way, just because everybody else is doing it is not necessarily the best reason, because it's not. So I just wanted to hit that. All right, some common issues I see, things that my clients come to me and say, please help us. We think we're broken, but we don't know why, which is about as specific as clients will come to me. Is they're pretty sure that they could be reusing content, but the current tools don't allow it. So if you're using Word and you think you could be reusing content, it is technically possible to do it in Word, but the overhead is about 50%. So while you can, in fact, reuse content in Word, and I don't mean cutting and pasting, I mean actually reusing it, it's actually going to reduce the time that you have to create content by about 50%. So any benefit that you would get in terms of time, et cetera, by reusing the content in Word is completely eaten up by the overhead of doing it in Word. Perhaps you're using a document-based product by, for example, a company that starts with an A. And it's not, you can reuse the content, but it's not easy to do it because the product itself lends itself to a chapter-based methodology. and you'd like to use a tool that lends itself more to a topic-based authoring kind of environment. That's a good thing that a needs analysis will bring out, or a problem that you have that would kick off a needs analysis. Perhaps you are doing a lot of manual post-processing to get your outputs. I've seen a lot of this. Sometimes it's because the team doesn't know how to use their tool to automate that, possibly because nobody's ever had the time to figure it out. Yeah, reformatting the same documents over and over and over. This is a Word environment. We all know this is a Word environment. If you're using Word, you spend an enormous amount of time just reformatting the same documents. I've done some informal studies with both my own company, with client stuff, and when I've been docs manager, and it's typically 30% of your time. If you're in an environment where you're creating content in Word, about 30% of your time is being spent just simply reformatting the same document. We don't add value to our customers or to our employers when we spend our day reformatting the same document over and over again. So that's a bad thing. The delivering new formats, I've been pushing that, but that's really coming that just about everybody who's contacting me is saying, yeah, but we have to start delivering in new formats, whether it's ebooks or video or something. There are these new formats that are coming. Deadlines are getting more aggressive. We've all experienced that. People are starting to get headcount, but they're not getting the headcount they need. Content development process is slow and hard. I have seen that even with some of the, quote, more modern tools. If you are developing in a chapter-based environment, it can be a very slow and very hard way to develop content. A big one I think we've all seen in the last few years is adding an offshore team in India or China or whatever it is, and they need access to your content too. They're developing content and they need access to that content. So the way you did it before with a group of people who were sitting in one office who just, called over the wall, to the cue wall to each other, hey, I'm going to work on, the blah book today. Don't anybody touch it. That worked fine. You can't do that with a group that's working in India. Not really. I mean, you could, but it's really hard. Hiring more people and your processes take forever. This happens when often there is very little written process, and TechCom people tend to be the shoemaker's children. We just simply don't have time to document how we do stuff. It's all tribal knowledge, and that works fine until you get a group in India or China, or even you add 2 new people in your office, and now suddenly everybody is spending their time letting the new people know how stuff is done, and it's all done through tribal knowledge. And then a big one I see is the way we're doing things is not scalable. We can't add more languages to our localization. We bought a company, and we don't have the means to scale the way we do things to include their content, but we've got to because we've got to. We're adding more staff, and this tribal knowledge is not scalable. We are adding new products, and we should be reusing content, but the way we're doing things, it's just a nightmare. It's just hard. So these are issues that you might have that are good reasons to kick off a needs analysis. All right, so how hard is it to do a needs analysis? It is simultaneously both easier and harder than you think. We've been doing this kind of analysis for our audiences for years. We've been sitting down, figuring out who these people are, what they need, how we can best meet those needs, what is it that we need to do in our group to meet those needs, et cetera, et cetera. We've been doing this for years with our audience. We've got the skills. It just sounds different when we say a needs analysis. We've been doing needs analysis for our audiences. I mean, this is what we do, right? So we've got the skills. We can absolutely sit down, do an honest evaluation of where we are, an honest evaluation of the business drivers, figure out where we can see cost reductions, cost savings, or revenue increases. We can absolutely do that. But it can be really hard for a lot of reasons outside of our skills. Number one, it's hard, very hard to be objective. It really is. It's very easy to forget to look at things because it's been that way for a long time, and you don't have any expectation of it changing. So you can just totally forget to look there. How many of you have walked into, maybe you've got family coming, and they're going to stay for a week at your house, and so you walk into your bedroom, and you suddenly really look at your bedroom and go, oh my God, I had no idea. This has to be picked up. And, you haven't seen it because you haven't seen it. You may have gone at some point, you may have had the thought, gosh, we should get this cleaned up. I think I'll go sit out in the sun. It's a gorgeous day. That may have been, but it's not until you actually have a reason to look at it that it occurs to you, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. This has got to be picked up. A needs analysis can also be very political. And it is often shocking how political this can get. Because in your TechCom group, for example, people can get very defensive about the way that they're doing things now. And they don't want to be wrong or bad. They don't, and none of us like that. None of us like the feeling that somebody is coming in and saying, tell me what you do. Oh, you do it that way, do you? Huh. Well, that seems unusual. None of us like that. Now, all of us are doing stuff the way we're doing because it just made sense at the time. Or we've never had time to actually come up with a better way to do it. This can also get very political when you get outside your group because, as it turns out, most people have an opinion about how we should be doing things, we in TechCom. And often they haven't a clue how we should be doing things, but they've got opinions and they'll share them. And part of this, I think, comes from the fact that people often don't understand how we do what we do. So this whole thing can get really political. It can also be hard because you could just be really tired of pushing this rock up the hill day after day after day. I know how difficult that can be. And, you could just be tired of pushing this rock up the hill. You've been saying, month after month after month, we've got to figure out a better way to do things. We've got to figure out what we're doing because I don't think we know what we're doing. And everybody goes, yeah, after this next release or after whatever. It can also be political, and somebody just posted this, it can also be political because people don't like change. They just don't like it, and they can get very upset about that. What do you mean we're going to change? I know how we do what we do. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's weird. But I know how to do that, and I'm scared about learning a different way. I'm afraid if I learn a different way, then maybe will fire me or downsize me because maybe we won't need me anymore. And I'm the only one who knows how to do this difficult thing. And I have job security because of that. So you may need an outsider. Very often when my clients come to me, I don't say anything different than they know. They know what the problems are. They know what it is they need. But every time they talk about that with people in their company, they are not taken as seriously as one might hope. So they'll bring in an outsider to say what they're saying, and everybody says, oh, well, yes, I don't know why we haven't heard this before, which is wackadoodle, but yet true. Okay, what's next? All right, so I want to look at something. I want to look at an example file. This is where I start. When I'm asked to come in and look at things, start a needs analysis, I have a series of questions that I start with. I am not saying that this is every question to ask. I use this list as a place to start the conversation, and that lets me kind of, just get the basics down, and then we figure out from there. So let me put my glasses on so I can read this too. So this is an Excel spreadsheet. You're going to get a link to this tomorrow. This is on my website. You'll get a link. You can download this, and you can start using this to do your own needs analysis because you can do this on your own. You don't have to pay me or another consultant a ton of money to do this. You may decide as you're doing this you want to do that, but you can absolutely start doing this on your own. So I have broken this into areas: cost, current docs, we'll scroll down, staffing, delivery methods, localization, and other. And again, these are not all the questions that one could ask, but it's a place to start. And the way I do this is I'll ask this question, and then I'll make notes. If I can, I'll assign a dollar amount to this. What is it costing, or what are we losing? So what it's costing is just the number. What it's losing in points. And think of that as the business driver, the business reason. So I will, a number 1 is this hurts the most. A number 5 is, yeah, it'd be nice if we could fix it, but we're really actually pretty comfortable with it if we can't. And that will prioritize for me the stuff that really needs to get fixed. And that is, for me, that's where I tie the business drivers in. But you should use this however it is that works best for you, but I start from a business point of view. Let's start with the business stuff, because let's start there. That's where we're going to be able to get management to start making choices. So content silos, could we be delivering better content? Are our customers happy with the content? Or are they calling support for basic questions? And you can assign a dollar amount to that. You can ask support, what percentage of your calls are basic questions? And then what is it? What does a phone call cost in tech support? Are we doing any kind of single sourcing right now, or are we maintaining multiple source stocks, and so on? I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I wanted to just show this to you. Because I also think what I don't see a lot is including the staff issues. And I think the staff issues are really important. What levels of expertise are your staff? Staff in TechCom, anybody who's creating content. Do we use contractors frequently? Because usually if you're using contractors, they're not going to have that deep product knowledge. And that's going to limit the kind of content that they can probably realistically be creating, which can work fine. I've used contractors for the stuff that doesn't require deep product knowledge, and that lets my staff, who do have deep product knowledge, focus on that stuff. So that's a good way to do things. So there's no negative here, etc. So I just wanted to show this to you so that you guys could get a sense of what it is, the whole localization thing. And by the way, for many, many, many people, it is the localization costs that are driving everything. Whether it's we're adding new languages, or we're going to start localizing, or we've looked at what localizing is costing us and we all got lightheaded and had to breathe into a paper bag. Very, very often it's the localization issues that will kick off everything else. So all right, so I'm going to minimize that. All right, so let's look at 2 example situations, and then we'll take some questions. These are 2 recent clients I've worked with. So client 1 is a large health insurance company. They've got 60,000 employees worldwide. Oh, sorry, nationwide, US-wide. So they've got a lot of employees. They've got a lot of official content developers, people whose job it is to develop content, customer-facing content. But they have a lot of other people who are also creating customer-facing content. Whether this is what they do full-time, such as marketing people, or they're doing it just as part of the course of their job, but their job is actually something else. They had no process. I could not believe this. We sat down and we started looking at their processes. They had no process. Anybody could create content. They would throw it up onto a SharePoint site. Anybody could create SharePoint sites, and anybody could set permissions for anybody else to join SharePoint sites. They would send out some emails to people saying, I've written this thing and it's on the SharePoint site. Let me know what you think. And then that would often kick months of back and forth, and it would escalate through, what's the word I'm looking for, up the chain, until finally directors and vice presidents would get involved in the content. Their idea of what the content should be would be typically completely different, that there was no ownership of this content. And then finally, after months of back and forth, the content might be released out to customers. At that point, nobody knew where the source files were, because people were copying things off the SharePoint site, making changes, and then uploading them to another SharePoint site that they had access to, or they thought was more convenient, and so on and so on. they estimated they probably had 5,000 people creating customer content, customer-facing content, and this was the process. I couldn't believe that. I just couldn't believe it. This was all in Word, so there was no content reuse, no standards for this content, etc. The official TechCom group had some standards, but again, everything was all in Word, so there really wasn't any content reuse. There was a lot of copying and pasting, but that's not such a good way to reuse content because things change. Health insurance companies have things change fairly often. And so nobody knew where any paragraph had been reused throughout all of the places that it was reused. There were no templates, so everything was manually formatted in Word to however it was the writer, and there's your free typo, it costs nothing extra for that, whatever it was that the current writer thought looked nice. So there were no templates. And they were required by law to provide content in multiple languages, but there was no localization process. They just, if I had a document that needed to be translated into Spanish, I would just ask the woman next to me who spoke Spanish if she would just do that. And she would just do that. So for those of you who have been around for a while, you're probably got your head down on your desk and going, it was like 1,000 people were self-employed in one building. And the customers were bearing the brunt of this. Customers were getting information that said different things depending on the document that they accessed. And this is all in a regulated environment. And this was one of those things where everybody involved kind of had the sense that there was something wrong here, but it wasn't until we sat down and did the need analysis, looked at where they are in an honest, we're not kidding kind of way. They were as horrified as I was. They had a sense things were a mess, but it wasn't until we walked through and did that honest evaluation and tied it to the business goals that everybody got lightheaded and frightened. Because if they got, every time they got audited, it was a nightmare, and they had a feeling it was because of their processes, but they'd never actually had it laid out in black and white. And the business driver that lets them sell moving to new tools and new processes was our audits are difficult, they are painful, they are expensive, they consume enormous amounts of our time, and the auditors are always mad at us, and they're in a federally regulated environment. Just simplifying the audit process for them, which cost them tens of thousands of dollars, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just simplifying and streamlining the audit process for them was going to pay for everything several times over. That's the return on investment. We're going to spend X number of dollars, and we are going to save X times 7. So huge. So the business goals for these guys, once they had an honest assessment of where they were, was let's reduce the content development costs. Let's reduce inaccurate information. Let's increase our regulatory compliance. Let's increase the timeliness of the content, because they had old content they didn't even know about until we started looking for it that was available for customers that said things that were flat out wrong, if not actually illegal now with the changes in healthcare. They desperately needed to reduce the source file loss, and the resulting time to recreate it, constantly recreate it. And then as an added benefit, they saw that they could increase content reuse. So there was a whole set of processes and tools and ways of doing things that we recommended out of that needs analysis. And I think the decision they made for the tools and the processes was absolutely the right decision for them. So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2, small business unit in a large company. Their documentation stood independent of all the other business units. The docs have been run by one part-time employee and many contractors through the years. And they rolled the contractors through it about every 6 months. The user guide for the main product was nearly 1,000 pages. Almost all of it was just narrative. There was almost no graphics and almost no steps, although buried in the narrative were a ton of procedures. But they weren't formatted as procedures, so there was no way that you would know looking at it that this was a procedure. They had no style guide, so the writing and the way they talked about things was inconsistent within one chapter, much less across the book. They had no online help for their online product in 2012. No online help. Their main flagship product had 28 docs. All of them were like this. And then they bought another company. And the other company had 15 manuals for their products, and they had a group with a style guide. So the company they acquired was in much better shape. And that kicked off the needs analysis. That kicked off everything for them. Their business drivers were they wanted to reduce support calls. They wanted to increase the usefulness of their content for their users because their support calls were off the charts. They wanted to include online help in their products so they looked like they had joined, the 20th century. They wanted to use video and other non-traditional content. They had a feeling that this was something their customers wanted based on a survey they did of their customers. So they had a lot of business drivers. And I'm running short on time, but you guys can see that. So, all right, so what value is there for you to do a needs analysis? You're going to accurately and completely understand your current situation, what the challenges are, what needs to be fixed, what the costs are, and how to start fixing those. And out of your needs analysis is going to fall a plan. A plan is going to fall right out of that. It may be a multi-year plan, and that's okay, because very often the better way to solve all of this is a multi-year plan, because too much change at once is hard and scary. And guys, we spend an awful lot of time analyzing our users and what they need, but we can forget about ourselves, and we really need to stop doing that. Okay, you guys can see that? All right, so you're going to get a link to the recording and the file tomorrow. Let's throw open some questions. Jen, do we have any questions? And by the way, you guys can feel free to type questions right now if you've got them. Jen, do we have any questions that I haven't covered as I went?
Yes, we have what I would say is a really good point of clarification from Larry. He says, Sharon, when you look at changing processes, how do you get the writing team's buy-in when they feel threatened? And he made another comment that I thought was valuable. More politics. Writers can feel threatened if they think you're going to take away.
Jen just quietly went away. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. There you are.
Here I am. Yeah.
Yep.
Larry also added to that, more politics. Writers feel threatened if they think you're going to take away the tools they're comfortable with, which I thought was a good point.
Well, that is. And I like to get the people who seem most scared, and scared will usually show up as most resistant. I usually try to get them involved in being the expert in the new stuff. Sometimes that's not going to work, but a lot of times it can. You just explain to them that, you know what we're doing so well in this other tool, and you're my expert on this. And realistically, they probably are. This is not, blowing smoke in anybody's nose. They probably really are an expert. I'm really counting on you to help me take the knowledge that you've got, moving it into the new tool and the new process, and then make you, just like you are now, the keeper of that. So when people have questions, they come to you. Because, man, you know the stuff out of this, Most of the time, that works well. Occasionally, you're going to find somebody who simply cannot make the change. And as difficult and as painful as it is, after you've given them every opportunity to make the change, sometimes the best thing you can do is cut them loose. It's just no longer a good marriage anymore. I'm not saying fire them all and start over, but I think we've all worked with people who just simply cannot change. They just can't. And that's fine. They get to make that decision. And if after you've offered them every possible, you've trained them, you've done everything you can to help them make that change, if they can't do it, it may be best to cut them loose. It just may be. They're probably not happy. You're probably not happy. It's just all icky. So, all right, we've got 3 more minutes officially. Yahoo! So, any other questions up, Jen?
I don't see any that have rolled in so far, but we'll keep the question bar open for another minute or so.
Okay. By the way, Jen is one of my favorite names because my beloved niece's name is Jen. Just a little piece of information.
There is not a dearth of Jens on the planet.
Actually, I see one up that says, make sure that the buying customer and the using customer have the same requirement. Oh, that's a good question.
Okay.
Ooh. All right, so the statement is, note, be sure that the buying customer and the using customers have the same requirements. A needs analysis can ask that question to make sure that there are not two requirements lists, and that is absolutely true. Very often, the people who are buying your product are not the people who are using it. This is especially the case if you're in the business-to-business world. The people who are buying your product are obviously purchasing, but are often a couple of levels above the people who are actually going to use it. And very often there's very different stuff. And so understanding that you have these two different groups can start giving you insight into the things you really need to be delivering, which feeds back into will our processes and our tools and our content development methodology support what the second audience is going to want. So really good comment. All right, any other questions? We've got 1 minute left.
I haven't seen any roll in yet, but I would like to just make the comment that we got a wonderful thank you from a couple of people, as well as applause when you requested applause. So thank you for the applause.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. All right, well, I want to take a moment to, again, thank DCL for providing the space for us to have this webinar. I hope you guys got something valuable out of it. It is the first time I have done this particular webinar. So if there was information you were hoping to get but didn't, that kind of feedback is really useful to me, and I can update and change this, to accommodate that, which I know helps you not at all for this one, but, I will do this again, I'm sure. And so that really helps me. I just thought I'd give you an overview so that you would get a sense when somebody says, we should do a needs analysis. You don't go, really? What's that? And I want to thank you for giving me that hour out of your day. So, Jen, do you have anything in closing you want to say?
I don't. Just a reminder that the webinar will be available, as Sharon mentioned, both via DCLlab.com, the address you see on your screen, as well as it will be sent out. And we ask that you give about 24 hours or so for that process to happen. And that's it. We hope you join us in the future for more webinars, especially with Sharon.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I want you to go have a great day, do something amazing, because today is an opportunity to do something amazing. And go and be a difference, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys, so much. Bye-bye.